I recently received an order for some of my handmade craft paper sketchbooks. I need to fulfill them, and I also have a few things that have been percolating in my old gray cells for a while, and I want to share those thoughts with you. As you listen, I'd like for you to share your thoughts too. Tell me what you think in the comments section below. So let's get started. I want to say right off the bat, this isn't going to be a tutorial on how to make my sketchbooks. You will see a lot of the process, but I'm not giving any explanations at this time. Rather, it's going to serve as the backdrop for me to share some thoughts that I have on the topic of criticisms and critiques. But before I get into that, I want to thank Nancy from Rochester, New York, for ordering 2 of my 6-inch by 12-inch craft paper handmade sketchbooks. I enjoy making these. The sketchbooks were inspired by artist Scott Christensen. I attended a lecture and demo that he gave at the Booth Museum sometime last year. I decided when I saw these that I wanted to make some for myself, and I did. So I went out and got the paper that he uses and created my own binding and all that. And I had fun making it. Others saw what I was doing and asked if I could make them one. So that snowballed into now I have a store on my website at carlolson.tv. If you click on the sketchbook tabs, there you will see some of the sketchbooks I have available for sale and several that have already sold. Anyway, I enjoy making them, and that's what you're seeing in this video is I'm preparing those 2 sketchbooks that Nancy ordered. So you see me cutting out the backboard, which is triple thick chipboard. I'm cutting the paper, the craft paper. It's from Thunderbolt. It's 80-pound cover stock. And then I bind it and prepare it for shipping. So let's get into this. I've been thinking about criticism and critiques. You know, we all criticize if we're honest with ourselves. And it's true, some give criticism more than others. And we all need criticism. We are all hurt by criticism. We are all improved by criticism. Yeah, it seems like a contradiction, doesn't it? I personally feel conflicted with the subject myself, and you may feel conflicted with it too. You know, it can feel like an attack on your person, especially harsh criticism. It hurts, and it can have long-lasting ramifications. And I remember a painful experience that I had when I was a teenager. I loved the idea of playing the trumpet, and I did get a trumpet. I wanted to be the next Herb Alpert, right? I wanted to be able to play like him. I just thought that was so cool. Unfortunately, all beginning trumpet players at first sound like an elephant stampede, so it wasn't easy. I'm from a large family, and we were living in a tiny house, and so practice sessions were not well received, and understandably so. But I persisted, and as I progressed, I was referred to a trumpet player that performed with the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra. Wow! Now it was the big times. I was going to learn from a master. I was excited by this. Well, and I did. I started taking lessons from him, and on my 4th lesson, I had a bombshell. My instructor told me to go home. He said I had no talent, and he wasn't going to spend any more time with me. I was crushed. And I went home, and I sold my trumpet, and I never played it again to this day. You know, his criticism was extremely harsh, and it was devastating. And, you know, come to think of it, I guess I've held subconsciously a grudge because of my supreme embarrassment and hurt. I never, ever went to another performance of the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra down to this day. I need to get over that, I know. but it did have a profound effect on me. That type of criticism does nothing for anyone. The negative experience that I had with this so-called master trumpeter of the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra affected the way I dealt with criticism going forward, and not necessarily in a healthy way. So I had to come to grips with that. And so here I am. I am considerably older. Many decades have gone by. And here I am. I'm still thinking about criticism and critique, specifically as it applies to those who are learning how to paint, those who are artists. The reality of the matter is our growth as an artist depends on accepting and dealing with criticism and critiques. No matter what kind of experience we've had in the past, no matter how badly our egos have been bruised, it's still something that's necessary for us to grow. So it's something I've been thinking about, and I hope my thoughts today make some sense to you. I'm going to talk it out a bit. My thoughts aren't fully crystallized as yet because I'm still processing it, and I would love to hear your take on this in the comments below. So there are 3 specific areas of criticism and critiques I want to focus in on. There may be more, I don't know, but this is how I've broken it down. There's negative criticism, there is constructive criticism, and then there's self-criticism. So those are the 3 areas I want to talk about. First, I want to talk about negative criticism. Now, let's face it, if we put ourselves out there as artists, and we will, because half the fun of painting is, having somebody see it, right? So we show our work on our website, we put it out on social media, we publish a YouTube video about it. Well, guess what's going to happen? You are going to get criticism. You are going to get negative criticism. You're going to hear things like, yeah, you just need to pack up your brushes and go home. You're fat. You're ugly. I can't stand the sound of your voice. Abstract painting is an art. Modern art is an art. Representational art is an art. And I could just go on. I could just go on. The one that really takes the cake, and this really happened, there was this well-known artist that said he was upset that people like Van Gogh. I mean, it just upset him terribly. He said Van Gogh had no talent and wasn't worthy of being admired by the masses. Huh? What? Oh, well, so you just never know where this negative criticism is going to come. And you probably can see the problem with negative criticism. It usually isn't kind, and it has nothing of value to offer. It feels like a personal attack. It's an attack on you, who you are as a person. It's an attack on things that you cannot change. You have no talent. You're fat. You're ugly. I don't like the sound of your voice. Oh, come on. There's no value in that type of criticism. And unfortunately, we all know that person. They rarely have anything nice to say about anyone, or it's always a put down. I don't know. Perhaps their negativity is just a sad reflection of themselves and their internal insecurities. I just don't know. Maybe in their hearts and minds they feel elevated when they put others down. And their criticism can be kind of a passive-aggressive thing. They might say, oh, that's nice. Ooh, but what about this? They can never let a compliment go without a tisk-tisk. What do you do with that, right? So the best thing to do, I think, is just, try not to get angry about it. Try not to take it personally and just ignore it. But I realize that can be hard, and I'm still learning how to do that. Sometimes it gets the better of me. I remember one example. I posted this YouTube video, and I spent a lot of time putting it together. It was kind of a vlog style video. And this artist gave me a thumbs down and then made the crack, too much yakking and not enough painting. That stung. I couldn't let it pass. So I responded to the comment, tried to make light of it and move on. But, it got to me and I felt bad for it, for it getting to me. But every time I'd go to that video and respond to comments, and most of the comments were by and far positive, but I would see that comment. I finally said, I'm never going to get over this the way I ought to. So I just deleted it. It just made me feel bad. And now it's gone and I feel better. Should I have done that? I don't know. But it did make me feel better to not see it anymore. But really and truly, the best thing to do is just try not to get angry about it, not take it personally, and just ignore it. So you see where I'm coming from. I'm a hypocrite with this to some extent. I'm still learning how to do that. So, and the other thing is sometimes you can learn from negative criticism. We don't see ourselves as others see us, so it can be a good exercise to see if we can discern why they gave that negative criticism. Maybe what we did didn't line up with their expectations and they're taking it out on you, right? Maybe I do talk too much. Maybe this person who complained about my video, he just wanted to see maybe a time lapse or, something that just showed painting. Didn't want to hear any of my commentary, just like I'm giving right now, right? So, I could probably learn from that, make sure my content appeals to others. Or maybe I just need to be resolved that, okay, this is what I do. That's what he wants. He can move on and I can move on, right? But we can still possibly learn from it. So it's always good to do a little bit of self-examination, but don't dwell on it too much, right? Because sometimes, or most of the times, there's really no basis of truth in it in the first place. Just let it go. And trying to engage with someone giving negative criticism, it can backfire on you. Don't ask me how I know. Okay, well, all right, I will tell you how I know, okay? Just one example. This involves another YouTube video. I had a really abusive commenter. There was nothing I could do to make this person happy. Bear in mind, when we content creators put something out on YouTube or we publish a podcast, it's free content. No one has to watch it. And what I have made with my own time and my own money. Okay? But that did not matter to this person. And how dare I not meet this person's demands? They wouldn't stop. They just would not stop. And finally, I'd had enough, and I deleted her comments. And everything was just escalating. But then when I deleted her comments, it made her furious. And she went on this virtual rampage, making a point of thumbs downing every single video that I had and escalating her negative comments. I finally banned her from the channel. It made me feel bad. They would not back down. But see, my mistake was engaging with her. I should have just let it go and been done with it. Now, since then, I've learned that YouTube has this really cute trick where a Debbie Downer troll can be hidden from everyone on a channel without them ever realizing it. They still see their comment as if nothing was wrong, but no one else can see their trolling. And they can troll to their heart's content without me or my audience having to see it. How cool is that, right? Well, I hope I didn't sound too gleeful in saying that. Let's get back to the point. Negative criticism, the best thing to do is to ignore it, let it roll off your back, and move on. So now I want to talk about constructive criticism. It's the exact opposite of negative criticism. It is something that offers value to the person receiving the criticism or critique. It's much different than negative criticism. It is something that we need. Constructive criticism is important for us to receive in order for us to improve our skills. We really need the help of others to make progress. However, I know even this kind of criticism can be hard to take. We feel vulnerable, we feel exposed, And then we can also make the mistake of tying our self-worth with our progress in learning as an artist. And don't ask me how I know that either, please. Constructive criticism or critiques offer something of value to the artist, something that will help them overcome a challenge, connect the dots of what they're learning, improve a technique. It's something that's practical. It's something you can use if you're receptive to it and willing to apply the advice. Ideally, we should seek out constructive criticism. We really should. But it's not easy to do that sometimes. More often than not, though, constructive criticism will come unsolicited. You didn't ask for it, but here it comes anyway. Either way, how we react to it determines how much we benefit from it. And it's true, it's easy to become defensive. I know I personally struggle with it at times myself. And if you are honest with yourself, you are too, right? That being said, I have truly benefited from unsolicited critiques. I'll give you a couple of examples. So the first example I had was I had just completed a painting, a mountain scene, and an artist friend of mine saw it and asked me if I was open to a suggestion. I admit my heart palpitated just a bit. I was apprehensive about it, but my desire to become a better painter outweighed the pathetic needs of my fragile ego. So I said, yes, tell me. And boy, was I glad that he gave me that advice. I immediately made the change he suggested, and wow, what a transformation. The painting, it made the painting, and I really appreciated that. I didn't ask for his advice. I probably should have, but when he offered it, I'm glad I took it. So that's one example. And then another example, I had a similar thing happen. It was a different kind of painting. It was a large painting, and though I was generally happy with it, I knew something was off. I just couldn't say what it was. Another artist serendipitously privately messaged me and said he very much liked the painting. But then he asked me if I was open to a suggestion. I said, well, sure. So I swallowed my pride again, and I opened myself up to his suggestion. And you know what? He was spot on. But I did have another apprehension. I was afraid to implement the change he suggested because I was afraid I'd ruin the painting. But and I let him know that. And so he kindly made a suggestion as to how to address that issue. And guess what? It worked. And now the painting is a much better painting because of that unsolicited constructive criticism that I received from him. So I'm grateful to have gotten it. I said a couple of examples. I'm going to share one more, okay? One of the best experiences I've had receiving unsolicited criticism came from a true master painter. He's one of the best painters in the United States. This is artist Lynn Schmiel. I had taken a workshop where we could select 2 out of 7, I think it was 7 instructors. And I didn't know Lynn at that time. I should have, but I didn't because I'm new to this, right? I'm just now beginning to learn who is who and the kind of paintings that I like, right? But anyway, I chose 2 instructors, 2 fantastic instructors. They were great. But Lynn was part of the pool. And so we went on this field trip to apply what we had learned in the classroom. We were going to apply that in our plein air painting. So here I was in an isolated place along a lake shore. And that's just the way I work. I found the place where no one else was around. I found a subject I wanted to paint, and that way I wouldn't feel intimidated, and I could enjoy the quiet there. Now, after I'd been painting for a while, I see Lynn Schmiel walking along the lake shore towards me. And he stopped and he said hi, and we chatted for a few minutes. It was quite an honor to be able to do that with him. Then he looked over at my painting and he said, you know, I'm not really supposed to do this since you're not in my class, but would you mind if I make a suggestion? And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? He's one of the greats. Of course I want to hear what he's got to say. So I immediately agreed. He is a master at painting water. And so he made a suggestion that was simple and effective. And it transformed my painting right there on the spot. Wow. I am so glad he stopped by and gave me that advice. I found out later that is not something he generally does. He's not in the habit of giving unsolicited constructive criticism. That's just not something he does. But I was so happy that he did. Now, in each of these three cases I just mentioned, I did not ask for the constructive criticism, yet I benefited from it greatly. So that brings me to one of my conflicted feelings about constructive criticism. I do think there are some cautions with it. I do. I think there are some things to think about that we fail to think about when we're offering to give it to another artist. Let me see if I can go through this and make some sense out of it, okay? Though I have personally benefited from advice, I didn't ask for it, I still believe this way. I still think it's probably better not to give unsolicited advice. I personally do not feel qualified to go up to an artist and do that. And I think most people are really more receptive to critiques when they take the initiative to ask for it. The timing will be right. And the other problem I have with that too is more often than not, the so-called constructive criticism comes from an artist that's probably about as good as you are. You know, to me, it's easier to take that criticism from a Lynn Schmiel or a Ralph Oberg than it would be from one of my peers or someone that's not much better than I am. You know, we're peers in our development process. So, you know, it's going to have more meaning to me if a Lynn Schmiel comes by. I'm going to be very receptive to unsolicited criticism from someone like that than I would be if someone has about the same skill level I have, or maybe just a little bit more, or perhaps, you know, their painting skills, even though they've been doing it for a long time, it's still kind of, yeah, okay, you know, it's just the way it is. Lynn Schmiel's criticism is going to have more weight than the other person. But getting back to the matter of timing, my wife's brother-in-law, you know, from time to time teaches wood turning. And he has this saying, and I really like it. He says, the teacher will come when the student is ready. And the point is, timing is everything. And also context matters a great deal. A student may not feel that they're ready to tackle what you're going to suggest you work on. Their goals and motivation may not be ready at that moment. They may not be emotionally prepared to hear what you've got to say, right? And me personally, I have specific goals in mind as an artist. The critique that is offered must be in line with my goals. I may feel that I'm not ready for it. I may be focused on something else, and being the poor multitasker that I am, I may find it overwhelming to get a particular kind of critique. I won't be able to give it the mental bandwidth I need to give it at the time that I receive it. So timing can be everything. And also, you know, think about this. The context of it too is, let's say I really want to be a good impressionistic oil painter, but you are a watercolorist. I may not be as receptive to receiving constructive criticism from a watercolorist as I might be an oil painter. That is not to knock a watercolorist. I love watercolors, and I love the artists that are able to do it. They do a fantastic job, and I enjoy it. But it's not the medium that I am focused in on at this time. Well, you know, come to think of it, there probably is a lot that I could learn from a watercolorist. I think about in my library, I have this fantastic book. It's by Irving Shapiro. He has this classic book. It's an old book, but it's called How to Make a Painting. He's a watercolorist, but the principles in there apply. So there you go. I just negated everything I was talking about. See what I mean? I'm just kind of talking this thing through, right? It's hard for me to express what I'm saying here. I still think context is important when it comes to constructive criticism. I may not be ready for something that you have to offer me quite at that time. I may in the future, and that's when I, as a student, will come and the teacher will come, right? As my wife's brother-in-law says. So, yeah, the teacher will come when the student is ready. So when I'm ready for the teacher to step in and guide me. The other thing about constructive criticism is we have to keep in mind, realistically, it's an opinion. The very nature of art makes just about any advice that you get somewhat subjective. At its best, constructive criticism is still mostly an opinion. And in some cases, the advice can be just flat out wrong. So you've got to do a little fact checking. You've got to check this out, measure it against your goals, against your needs, and see whether or not it fits. If you're not careful and you take bad advice, it really could derail your development as an artist. It could really send you down this rabbit hole that's got nothing to do with where you want to be as an artist. So what's a good way to fact check? Well, I remember when my children were young and when I would ask them to do something or their mother would ask them to do something, what was the number one question? Why? Why? And rest assured, if you told them, Buck, because I told you so, that would not suffice. And really, that's not a good answer anyway, is it? I mean, sometimes you got to for their protection, but for the most part, it's not a good answer. They need to know the reasons why. And when you tell a child, and you have to do this over and over and over again, you have to teach by repetition. Inculcate means teaching by repetition. But that's what helps them to grow and mature and then develop. They will develop good judgment and reasoning ability that will benefit them as they become young adults. So ask for the reason, ask the why of the critique. And I think that's a good way to fact check it and see if it has a value and it's in alignment with your goals as an artist. Now, true, there are fundamentals to learn and master, such as design, composition, drawing, perspective, values, color, preparing materials and supports, and so forth. But even with these fundamentals, there can still be a great deal of variation in advice. Consider two painting instructors. Let me use this as an example. Maybe this will help you understand what I'm trying to say. Both instructors are competent painters. They both paint landscapes, but their individual styles are different. Now, one instructor insists that painting must have one central focal point. And the other instructor insists that a painting can and should have multiple focal points to help move a viewer's eye through the painting. Now tell me, which one is right? Both are accomplished painters. Both do good work. It depends, right? See, I'm more in alignment with the artist that says multiple focal points help move a viewer's eye through the painting. That's more right for me, okay? But it doesn't negate the other. But context matters. There's some variation there. There's some opinion involved, right? Here's another scenario. One instructor may insist on following the rule of thirds or the golden mean in composition. Yet another instructor may encourage breaking those rules to make a far more interesting painting. Which one's right? Right? Yeah, who's right? One instructor may insist on a limited palette, while another suggests an unlimited palette. So which one is right? Well, what are their goals as a painter? And what are your goals as a painter? So context matters. Which instructor more closely aligns with what you want to accomplish in developing your painting skills? Of course, only you can answer that. Now, there's a couple of more aspects of constructive criticism I'd like to address. One is how to give a critique. And of course, I know this sounds strange because I don't feel qualified to offer an opinion on that. I'm not the person that's going to give you a critique for your painting. I'm not there yet. But I do know what it's like to be on the receiving end of criticism or a critique. So perhaps these comments will help. And I've had some good conversations on this topic with other artists who do this really well, and they have some good thoughts about it. So first of all, remember a critique is not just about something done wrong by the painter. It's just as much about what you have done correctly, what you've done right. One of my instructors and mentors is artist Ralph Oberg. I remember I was painting with him one day, and of course he's orders of magnitude beyond what I am as a painter. But I asked him for advice on a painting I was struggling with, and what I remember about him was his kindness. Being kind is kind of like a lubricant that makes it easier to slip in a hard-to-stomach lesson into our puny, abrasive brains, right? And that kindness goes a long ways. The other thing that he did with me, and he was consistent in doing this, he would first identify what was working in my painting, and he would point at it. He would point at my painting and say, Carl, this is good. Keep doing this. So he focused on something positive, which from that time on has been amplified in my painting since then. That was a good approach to it. But of course, you still have to address problems, right? And so this is how Ralph would handle that. So the next thing he would do is make practical suggestions about overcoming certain problems in my painting. Perhaps it was a compositional matter. Perhaps my darks and lights, my values were off. So he would make some constructive observations about that, which I could apply right then and there. So those lessons from him, they all remain with me to this day. But how he gave that critique was important. I think it made me more receptive. It made me feel less defensive. I shouldn't be defensive, but it's human nature. We want to protect our fragile egos. So that's what we do. And I know some people say you should do, when you give criticism or counsel or constructive criticism, whatever you want to call it, a critique, you should do what is called a commendation sandwich. In other words, you say something nice, then you identify the problem, and then you offer some more encouragement and say something nice, right? So that's good. But I think there's some caution with that approach too, because you could get in the habit of doing that to the point that every time a person who gets a compliment from you, they next expect a sucker punch. Yeah, so you got to be careful with that. You can't just follow a formula. You've got to be genuinely interested in the person you're trying to help, and that may mean varying your approach with it. And the best thing to do is just to remember the golden rule. Treat others in the same way you want to be treated yourself, right? Now, one final thought on constructive criticism, and I don't know if this really falls here or not, but I want to talk about this anyway, okay? Every time an artist displays or posts an image is not an invitation for a critique unless they specifically say so. Now, I touched on this earlier when I said it's usually better not to give unsolicited advice. There's a time to speak and there's a time to keep silent. So when an artist posts an image, it's often because they're pleased with the process of getting there, and they're seeking encouragement and commendation. It fuels our desire to keep on learning. But what I've seen happen on occasion is an artist will post a painting and several people will offer commendation. Sometimes it's just a wow or that's amazing. And it can oftentimes be a little over the top. And hey, I've done it, and I won't stop doing it either. I'm going to do it because I want the artist to feel good about what they've done, right? And of course, it can be more helpful and meaningful and sincere to give a specific reason why you like their artwork. But, there's no rules with this. Just be gracious. But then there's that one person who wants to turn it into a public critique. Good grief, just give it a rest. Criticisms and critiques have their place, but not every waking moment of our existence as an artist. We need to breathe. We need to relax a bit. We need to sit back and enjoy what we've done, just like our grand creator has done. Remember when he created the heavens and the earth, he sat back and looked and said, "It is good." We have to have that opportunity to do that too. So we just don't need to have critiques all the time. I hope that makes sense. Well, anyway, that's all I've got to say about constructive criticism. There is one more type of criticism we need to talk about. So the last thing I want to talk about is self-criticism or self-critiques. This can be a touchy topic, I know. For example, when I post a painting in my social media feeds, it feels great to get comments like, "Wow, that's beautiful. I love it." But the danger to me is when I get such accolades is that I might actually start to believe it. Right? See, when we're overpraised, we have to fact check ourselves. We have to ask, am I as good as they say I am? And usually the frank and honest answer is no. Now, you might be reacting to this, to what I'm saying here and saying, you shouldn't put yourself down like that. And I've had people tell me that. I've gotten feedback. I've gotten emails saying, you should not be self-deprecating. You should not be criticizing yourself like that. But look, I get what you're saying. We all should have a measure of dignity and confidence. It's necessary. It helps us feel good about ourselves, right? But see, you don't really know me. You do not know my goals as a painter. Here's the thing. I started painting about 20 years ago. I would do a painting, and then maybe 6 months would go by, even a year would go by, and I'd do another painting. And to tell you the truth, that is absolutely no way to learn how to paint. It's just not effective. It's only been in the last 3 years that I've started devoting myself to learning how to paint seriously. And I've developed a clear let me try that again. I have a clear vision of what kind of painter I want to become. But to get there, I've got to be real with myself. I need to know whether or not my aim is good. I need to know whether or not I'm achieving the quality of work I want to do. Am I reaching my goal? I have to look. You can't drive a car without looking at the road. Otherwise, you'll crash, right? And the same is true with us as artists. You've got to have something to measure against. For example, my first paintings were in the manner of, get this, Bob Ross. Now, I love Bob Ross, so I'm not knocking him, okay? But that's where I began with my naive interest at that time in painting. Bob did a lot of good with his soothing encouragement. He reassured us that we all can learn to paint and enjoy the process. Hence, his brand was the joy of painting. So that's where I started, okay? But that was a starting point. And what a good starting point that was, because I did find joy in the process at that time. However, as my interest in art grew, I visited museums, I visited art galleries, I read magazines like Southwest Art and Art of the West. I became familiar with the works of people like Bill Anton, Matt Smith, Ralph Oberg, Scott Christensen, and others. And my tastes in art changed. And I decided I wanted to be the kind of painters these artists are, audacious as that may sound. So they became a touchstone, a milepost for me to measure myself against. Now, I have realistic expectations. I don't expect I'm going to be like them. nor do I have intentions of copying them. There's no way I'm going to get there in just a couple of years, right? It's going to be a lifelong learning experience. But that is my touchstone. That is my milepost. That means I have to learn to see the flaws in my work and learn to evaluate myself. And to do that, you have to have a clear vision of what your art should be. And sure, to some extent, that's going to be subjective. You know, a person who wants to do photorealistic paintings, they're going to have very different goals than, say, an impressionistic painter, right? And well-meaning friends and family, they may rebuke you for being too self-critical. And I suppose a person could be. There is the danger of going to the other extreme. But I think the bigger problem is when a person simply doesn't realize that they are bad at what they do. And naive art is the result. And that's not where I want to be. You have to be self-critical to a reasonable degree. Say you're learning a song on a guitar. If you don't know what the song sounds like, how will you ever know you've accomplished your goal? You've got to know when you hit a bad note. You've got to know that you didn't finger a chord correctly. You've got to know the rhythm and timing. You've got to get all those things right. You got to know what it sounds like so that you can practice, and get there. And eventually, when you perform that song, it sounds like that song. So I know what kind of painter I want to be. I've been to the museums, the galleries, I've read the books, looked at the magazines, browsed the internet, and based on what I see, I have a goal of where I want to go. And I have to be able to honestly tell myself if I'm on the right track or not. Being self-critical, then, is vital to our positive development as an artist. It's not the same thing as putting ourselves down, though that's the way others may interpret it. It's a necessary tool. It's an important tool for growth and positive self-worth. Well, I know this has been a long-winded discussion on my part. I hope you got something out of that. I would like to get your thoughts on it. You know, as I talk through this subject, there's a few things that popped up in my mind that I hadn't thought about before. But, you know, I realize a lot of this topic is not about governing what others do. That's impossible. That's what people try to do, right? They try to legislate people in behaving and doing what they want them to do. But we discussed the golden rule, right? We want to treat others the way we want to be treated. And really, the only person I can change is myself. So it's on me to determine how I react to, and yes, benefit from negative criticism, constructive criticism, and self-criticism. It also helps me to reflect on how and when I give criticism. Perhaps give a whole lot less of it, right? Give it only when someone asks for it, and only if I'm qualified to give it. And I've got a long ways to go on that. But I need also to be ready to seek out constructive criticism or critiques and be open-minded to it, and then work to apply what I learned. Those critiques will benefit no one if you never apply what you've been told. And I certainly need to be vigilant in being self-critical. Of course, in a balanced way, not putting myself down, but I need to understand where I want to go in my development as an artist and be able to honestly evaluate where I am in developing my skills. So that's a lot to consider, I know. I hope it makes sense to you or it resonated with you in some way. Let me know what you think about this subject and your experience with it in the comments below. Well, it looks like I'm done with these sketchbooks and I'm ready to drop them off in the mail. So happy painting to everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.